Can I use your computer?
We can hear you now. We can hear you, Jane. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the April Council meeting. Welcome to fellow councillors, staff members and members of the public joining us on the live stream. Another gorgeous West Coast day. Jane, sorry, you're talking? Okay, she's now disappeared. I've asked Paul Madgwick to start proceedings today with a karakia. Paul, if you would do that now, please, much appreciated.
Yeah, sure. He honore, he korore, he mangarongo ki te whenua whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa, ha ngā te atua, he ngā kauhau ki roto ki tēnā o mātou, whakatungi o tō wāra o tapu, hei awhina, hei tohuku, hei mai a mātou, hei ako hoki a mātou, I ngā take e pāna ki te kāhui o Potini. All glory and honour to God in the highest, and peace to all people on earth. Renew in our hearts, each of us, and send your Holy Spirit to help and guide us in this meeting on the right path with the issues before this council. Amen.
Thank you very much, Paul. We have an apology from Francois Tumahoi. Any others received, Di?
No, apologies.
Someone like, well, I shall move that the apology from Francois Tumahoi be received. Will someone second that, please? Councillor Martin, thank you. All in favour say aye. Aye. Declarations of interest are available to you in Teams in the normal way. Please, once again, make sure that your declaration and information there is up to date. Item 4 on the agenda, urgent items, not on the agenda. Any of those, Simon?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Item 5, minutes of the meeting. The last meeting was the ordinary council meeting on the 24th of March, and there's a proposed amendment to those those minutes.
Yes, Chair. So it's to do with regards to the 3 Mile reserve. So we are proposing that we amend it based on the email that has been circulated and approved by councillors to take the figure of 3,000 from the fund to 30,000 from the fund. So happy for council to approve that variation.
All right. So would someone move that the minutes of the meeting on the 24th of March 2022, subject to the amendment that Simon has just indicated, which is increasing the amount from 3,000 to 30,000, be made, that amendment be made. Someone move and second that. Paul, do you want to speak or do you want to move the motion?
Thank you. I wanted to raise a question about this. So, is this going to be discussed further?
Through the Chair, it was based on the supplied scope of works that was supplied by the contractor, which clearly states it was 30,000, not 3,000.
So, okay. So, I mean, that is quite some blooper, isn't it? From 3,000 to 30,000. I'm just querying whether this is going to be, you know, if councils are going to have a chance to talk about this in public. I know it was raised on email, but I mean, that's a $27,000 discrepancy, which ought to be raised publicly.
So it's for the 3 Mile committee, through the Chair, in terms of how they allocate that fund. Council is purely holding that fund on their behalf. So I'll pass over to Councillor Cogan to make any comment.
Yep. Yeah, just to get you guys, give you guys some feedback on that. So right from the very start, we, had that allocation of the reserve funding in the account, and the intention was we would always eventually, which has taken a very long time, to get someone to do all the research and stuff that would be required, including research, audio, all of that, to be able to gather all of the information, which successfully we've finally ended up finding Vaughan Bradley able to do that. And so his price, I mean, even though he's only put in an initial invoice, I think it was 1,200 or something, his price is based on what he believes, it may get to, that was on the higher side. But, he's only just really in the early stages of actually going into doing all of this research and getting audios of different, older folk and stuff that are all connected with the 3 Mile area.
So, Jenny, are you saying that the 30,000 is an estimate of the likely cost?
It's an estimate of the likely cost, yeah. We've got, there's about $70,000 or $80,000 left in the account, and that was purposely kept there when we gave the other 150,000 to Laser Park, because our intention was always that we wanted to invest money in getting research done, being able to get a soft cover book made out of from the research, and potentially have some audio that, will also be able to be held just, like from older folk that lived in the 3 Mile area. And yeah, we also have a proposition at the moment from up at the industrial park, that we're talking to them, that because if there is technically then any funds left over of the 70 or 80,000, whatever the exact balance is, then yeah, we may be coming still back to council with any balance after all the research and the panels have been made, and looking at all of that then being fed into the entrance to the Heritage Park up at the airport.
So in your view, is the $30,000 a reasonable amount at this stage to set as an estimate for this work?
We're happy with the estimate of the $30,000 at this stage, and the further along Vaughan goes with actually doing the research and gathering the information, I guess at that point he has to still keep reporting back to the committee. So at any stage we can also say, okay, well, yeah, now we feel like we've got, adequate information to be able to do what we need to.
Thanks, Councillor Cogan. Paul?
Yeah, thank you. I supported this the first time it was raised, and I said, well, yeah, it's their money, and this is a perfect project to spend it on. Thinking that the $3,000 seemed very reasonable to me, but to then find that it's ballooned out to $30,000, in actual fact, was I can't support that. I mean, I've personally have researched and written the Remu, the Canary, the Bruce Bay panels for nothing, and never expected anything from it. And I'm just one of many. There are many others that have done voluntary work as well, and research and writing for these panels. But to find $30,000 charged for one set of panels for 3 Mile, I think is off the planet.
Well, it's not $30,000 for one set of panels. It's to go into all of the research, to go into a book and panels and whatever else it may need to be used for. Yeah, the recommendation with the $3,000 should never have gone through as it did in the first place.
Yeah.
So, Paul, are you suggesting that there should be some limit, a lesser or lower limit set at this stage, and the committee can come back for more if necessary, so that some sort of control is exercised over this?
Well, I think that's probably a good solution, Deputy Mayor. It does. I think anyone looking at this, taking a step back, would agree that that is what seems to be an exorbitant amount for a simple research and history project that's been done many times in many communities on the West Coast.
Yeah, I'm more than happy. I'm actually more than happy for it to, to be approved at a reduced rate. But I actually can tell you, Paul, that we've spent nearly 2.5, 3 years trying to get someone to even give even any volunteer time or anything into being able to pull this into fruition for us, and we've had absolutely no luck whatsoever. I mean, we even went as far as trying to contact the Canterbury University and get it done through, someone doing their master's program over there. So we've tried up until now to get this done,
Okay.
by cheaper means, but there was nobody.
Jenny, how would you feel if a limit of $10,000 was set at this stage? And then,
I'm happy for that. If that's what we need to do at this stage, is set a limit of 10,000, and then we'll know where we're at that point, and then we can come back.
Thanks.
To extend it. Yep, I'm happy for that.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other councillors have an input into this? Paul, how would you feel if the a limit of 10,000 was set on this estimate?
Yes, I think that's a good response. Thanks.
All right. In that case, I shall move that the minutes of the meeting of the 24th of March 2022 be confirmed. It's a true and record of that meeting, subject to the figure for the work just being discussed being increased from $3,000 to $10,000. Do we have a second to that motion? Councillor Hartshorn. Councillors, would you signify your approval by raising your hand to me, please? Those against? Councillor Martin?
No, sorry, I wasn't against. I was just electronically raising my hand.
Okay, all right.
And I will refrain from actually voting on that.
Just a question now, because this isn't what we agreed in email. Are we actually amending a resolution here, or should we be proposing a new resolution?
I suppose technically we should be formally amending the original resolution, shouldn't we?
Yeah,
Simon?
I think so.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think I go along with it if the minutes reflect that we are amending the motion. We probably need to actually, the minutes of the meeting are probably factually correct. We probably need to now propose a new motion to be recorded in these minutes, I would suggest, because we didn't discuss this at the last meeting in this way. We're discussing it now.
Okay, Di, what do you have now?
So I think I agree with Councillor Martin as proposed, Chair. So it's a new resolution.
So you're moving that resolution, Councillor Martin?
I'll move as such, record in these minutes. Yep.
And would someone like to second that if they're minded to, please? Councillor Hart. All those in favour, please raise your physical hands, please, so we can just see. Those against? Passed.
And if it can just be marked that I refrained from voting.
Sorry, yes, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cogan abstained because of potential conflict of interest. I approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed Ordinary Council meeting minutes of 24th of March 2022. Item 6 on the agenda, Simon, over to you. The action list, which is pages 5 to 11, in the agenda.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and councillors, and thank you, Chair.
So are you going to put those up on the screen?
I can do. Just one moment, I'll just share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take you through one by one, councillors. So the Canary School crossing, we have made progress, but unfortunately, as outlined previously, the Curbing and channeling crew have come down with COVID, and the finish date is yet to be quantified exactly when they will be able to finish it, but it is extending past March and probably past April, considering we're at the end of April now. I can come back with a confirmed close expected date following this meeting, councillors. Speed limit review, we're going to wait till after the annual plan process has been completed. Just to highlight that, I think Carl, the transportation manager, has received some proposed speed limit changes from the government. And is currently evaluating what they would be in terms of impact for Westland. I haven't seen them yet. Russ Joineys Gardens, some of the diversion has occurred. The rocking is still to be completed. And you would have seen that some weather event last week has caused it to be scoured out a bit, so that's been rectified. Unfortunately, it was in the middle of the project. And hadn't had the rock put in place yet, so they're sourcing rock at the moment. Revel Street trial, you'll have a report today from Fiona Stedden, Planning Manager. In terms of Pakiwatara building, we are hoping to have that brought to Council in May in terms of a program and final workshop. Point 7. We have an update from the Transportation Manager today on various components of transportation. Three Waters reform, I will be giving you after this session a very comprehensive review of current status of the program of Three Waters reform. Energy Centre contracted Brian Anderson to complete the study that's been partially funded by ECA. Cass Playground and Watera Playground. So in terms of Watera that's proceeding, the Cass Square Playground, we are going to be making an application for lotteries for the playground equipment, including incorporating that into the skate park as well. Acceleration Fund decision for the racecourse. I received an update yesterday and there's due to be an announcement on Monday. What that will be, we are waiting with bated breath. Hopefully it's a positive one for us.
Is that we might get our grant, Simon?
Correct, $3.8 million.
Yeah.
Mayoral Task Force for Jobs. There has been an approval that there will be another round of Mayoral Task Force for Jobs in the new 2022-23 year. The actual value of that is yet to be quantified. Beach access ramps, I have yet to forward the link to what that looks like, so I will do that shortly. That's still being worked through with Regional Council and the contractors Westlock in terms of final design. Staff positions, that's work in progress. CDM agreement for adoption, that's been completed, and that will come to the Joint Committee on the 11th of May for confirmation. The terms of reference was endorsed last council meeting, so that can be completed and removed. Poppy plaque seat that has been installed and completed. Gambling policy, we anticipate having an update in May in terms of an impact assessment. Beautification of Marks Road, the 10K has been allocated and been completed, community has been advised. Welcoming communities, that has been confirmed an endorsement and has been submitted to MB for confirmation. And 3 miles reserves fund, as discussed earlier, has been changed now to $10,000. Happy to take questions on any of those 21 actions.
Just before any questions, I see there's someone on my screen called Bill in the Zoom meeting. Who's that?
I can ask, Chair. That's Councillor Neil, so she's had to connect from her.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Hi guys, sorry about that.
Okay, Bill, welcome. Now, any questions? Paul Madgwick.
Thank you. Regarding the funding application to lotteries for Cass Square, what are the chances of local government getting funding from that? And if that fails, what then, please?
It's high. We have a high chance to actually receive funding. It actually fits the criteria quite nicely. So I would anticipate an 80% chance of success.
That's pretty high. Okay, thank you.
Like your optimism, Simon, that's good. Councillor Davidson.
Thanks. I just wanted to know if there's any design drawings for the skate park at all.
Only provisional ones at the moment. That's still being developed, but that is
so, so where do they go from the provisional ones, Simon?
So where the existing one is along the eastern boundary of Cass Square.
So there's nothing further outside that footprint.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other, Councillor Martin?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Carruthers. Can you just scroll up a bit, please, Simon? Start at the top. In 2 months, this action's going to be 4 years old. We really, and I mean, I can raise some of this too in the transportation update, but I appreciate we're in a COVID environment and that isn't helping us, but it would be really good to think that this can be completed this financial year. Because, yeah, I mean, look at the date, it's before this council took office in terms of the decisions around this matter. So I'd really like to see that completed. I think.
Yes, Councillor Martin, I entirely agree. It's taken way too long.
Thank you. Thank you. That's number one. Number two, in regards to the speed limit review, who made the decision to push it to after the annual plan? Because I'm not clear sure that was the decision of council.
There was a report from, was recommended by myself 2 council meetings ago.
Yes, the recommendation at the time, if I remember correctly, was for quite an extended 7 or 8 month consultation window. And I think we amended it there for a short, sharp, i.e. sort of 6 weeks consultation window. I wasn't under the understanding that was then going to take place in the new financial year.
It's just to ensure that we don't overload the public with a whole lot of different submissions in terms of annual plan and a speed limit review at the same time, just so we don't avoid any, I suppose, overburdening our ratepayers with requests for submissions.
Okay, maybe a suggestion, just because we're still obviously getting quite a lot of noise in the community, maybe a separate email address could be established, so when people do approach us in the interim and in the months leading up to July, that they can just, if they've got anything to do with speed limits, they can email the dedicated email address and they can just sit there until July to be considered, because I was under the impression that it was out for consultation at the moment.
No, it hasn't been submitted yet. That was raised last council meeting, Councillor. This action was the same last council meeting.
I think, well, no, this one's slightly morphed as well, because this is the old original one from 2020. And I think it's just had a bit of an update, but It's
Yes.
still, yeah. So if someone now at the moment, is raising an issue about speed, and there's a couple of emails we've had in the last sort of 3 months, could we just have, or should they just be going directly to you and you'll hold on to them until July? Or
I'm happy to be to take any requests to myself directly, and it can go as part of the submissions that are gathered. No need for another one at a future date.
okay, excellent. That would be helpful. Then that would be great to make that clear. If councils are happy with it, the Ross Chinese Garden. Can you just talk to us about what actually is going on there?
So obviously the resource consent has been completed and we have been successful in getting that. So the community has been working, want to take the lead on completing this piece of work to ensure there's no extra cost burden on any ratepayers for this activity. So we are working in kind support as project overseers with that community to ensure they are building it to the right standard. So they've got a local contractor, Peter Cornish, who's doing the work, and a lot of volunteer work around supplying materials as well.
And do they have a timeline that they're working to, Simon?
Well, the starter work, it comes down to their own availability to make it happen. So I don't think there's a set timeline. There's definitely a design standard they have to comply to. I don't have that detail of what the resource consent timeline limit, if there was a limit put on the timeline for that.
Okay, because it's like the intake is what's blown out, hasn't it?
Well, it hasn't blown out because it was going to be diverted that way anyway.
Yeah.
There would be like a normal rain event. The only thing that's happened in this case is it scoured out some of the earthworks that was underway.
Okay, I think Paul may have raised his hand for this matter. Are you, Rick?
Paul, sorry.
But I've got, yeah, no, it's all right. We'll just.
Paul,
I didn't want to interrupt Councillor Martin, but just it was a query over the Ross Gardens. Can I just ask if that was agreed to with the Renus group, that program of work and the engagement of that contractor?
That was done through the community group.
But not with the Renus group, given it's the Renus group's project?
No, this is definitely not a Renus group project. This is the Ross Lake level management. We've made it very clear that the Renus group focus on finishing the gardens, and the community will take a lead on working with us in terms of the lake level management. Two different projects.
Okay, has that been discussed with the Renus group though?
Yes, they're very clear on that, and Jenny Cogan can actually attest to that.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to be clear, because I know there's a lot of politics in Ross about this and everything, and I don't want to get in the middle of any of that, but to avoid any extra friction over it, I would have thought that there would be a clear delineation and discussion between the two groups over just what's proposed and who's doing it.
At the moment, it's very clear to me and to the community that the community are doing the Ross Lake management, which is the diversion, and Renus are completing the Ross Gardens, Chinese Gardens. Sorry.
Councillor Cogan.
Sorry, just to touch on that, yes. So the Renus group were very aware right from the start that the actual resource consent and the process of works to do that side of it was not going to involve them. It's just the gardens that they need to complete. However, my concern is now, once again, now that this has been taken over by the Ross community group, that you've said that there's no timeline that's been put on it, and I just have a fear that if there's no specific timeline now put on this, then which will hold back the Renus group from completing the work to complete the gardens, we're still going to be sitting here again in another 2 years' time, having the same conversation about the Ross Chinese Gardens being not being finished.
We're continuing to put pressure on them completing the rock. Also, the excavation works only happened about 3 or 4 weeks ago. The rock is the issue at the moment. So the local contractors, I believe, stockpiling some rock for them. Getting that rock to site is basically up to the community group as well. There is still plenty of work that the Chinese Gardens can continue on with without waiting for the level to be managed. We're very clear that there's still enough work for them to continue without waiting for the level to change.
So we got an indication though, did the Ross Community Group or the contractor give an indication of when it would, you know, how long it would roughly take?
I will have to go back and get a firm answer from them, Jenny.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, just wanted to note my concern over this also, and I think it's a bit naive to say that they're two completely separate projects, the lake level and the Chinese Gardens, because they're very interrelated. And of course, it's not just the Chinese Gardens, it's other plantings around the area that Venus have done. So I would like to see them being more included with both information and with decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, I'd just like to know what council's responsibility is on this. That's all.
Through the chair. So the responsibility for us is to execute the resource consent. That's all.
Thank you very.
That's the only thing we've ever committed to. We have tried to act as a middleman between the two entities, and it has not worked. So we've committed to doing the resource consent, paying for the resource consent, which is actually not even our obligation, but we've done that, and obviously supervising the diversion.
Thank you very much for that clarity.
Paul Madrick.
Sorry, just one quick one, not even in relation to Ross on it, but given the intervention that we have in this one, are we going to see the same level at the other debacle, which is the Kamara Chinese Gardens?
I believe Jenny Cogan attended a meeting last week. Jenny?
Yep.
You would like to update us on that?
Yep, that's correct. So I attended a meeting up there last week because the Kamara Residents Trust had gone out for tender process to try to find somebody to come in to give a price and complete the engineering work that needed to happen, and even got the assistance for the writing up the tender document from council, which was very much appreciated. However, there was no response again, but I'm pleased to be able to say that they have got an interested party that they're going to go back to now, that is looking into completing the work to get at least get some momentum going on the site. And I've also asked them in here to come back then and get other costings of the potential work it's going to cost to actually stage this over a period of time. Now, there was somebody, a delegate from the Chinese community. I'm just trying to, her name was Moon Lee. She's from the Guangdong Association. So she was there as well. She's going to go back and also talk to the Chinese Guangdong group and get approval from them that they're okay, that the Kamara Residents Trust continue to proceed that way. But there's a lot more clarity and plan in place. I'm not sure, Simon, if you also received a copy of the minutes from that meeting?
Yes, I have. I haven't had a chance to read them though yet.
Yeah. So we made some really good progress, I have to say, at that meeting. And I think now, I mean, it needed to be I think there just needed to be a little bit more formality around what potentially can be done with the money that's there, and but also it needs to be staged over a period of time. I think some of the works could be something like the front wall before you come into the garden area, may be something that will happen at a later date.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Martin, back to you. I think we were on the Ross.
Thank you so much. Yes, Ross Chinese Garden. So to me, we've obviously given in-kind support and our staff involvement. I would really like that to come with a condition around completion and timeline. I think that's really critical. I don't know whether a 3-month window or, you know, whatever is actually deemed appropriate, but then people are working towards that, and that there's appropriate oversight and support from our engineering staff to ensure that the, you know, that the work is done. Obviously, that is ongoing. Surely the timeline or constraints on that, Councillor, are out of our control.
Just through the chair, we will go back to the community and try and put a program of works together with that group. We have assigned a project lead to support them.
Yeah, cool.
Try and find a happy solution to completing them on as soon as possible.
What I was suggesting is, in terms of our time frame as well, is that our support ends on X date.
No, because the resource consent is ours, so we got to make sure it's built to the right standard.
Yeah, that's what I'm. So that's what I'm trying to say. So we hold the resource consent. We're working with the community group or groups to deliver an outcome. I think we can. It's fair for us as the consent holder to say we would like the outcome delivered by X date. Can we achieve that together as two groups?
We can't impose that as a condition, can we?
Really comes down to we could take it over and finish it ourselves, but then it comes a cost back to the ratepayer. At the end of the day, they're proposing to do this with volunteer labour and volunteer contractors and volunteer materials, which all comply to the resource consent.
Yep.
Doing that for zero cost is a great outcome for any community and for ratepayers. But there will be a time factor that we should impose.
Yeah.
But we'll work closely and find out what that timeline could be.
That'd be great. That would be really helpful. Cool. Thank you. We'll carry on down the screen. We'll do Revel Street at Revel Street time, if that's all right. Pakiwatara, we'll carry on. Roading we've got coming soon through Carl, which is great. Three Waters reform questions soon. Brian Anderson, is that West Coast Brian Anderson?
I'm not sure where he hails from.
Does anyone know? Or
I've got his CV, but I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, I'm just as in that's an organisation, is it, Simon? Or
yeah, it's his private owned business. Yes, he's been contracted through Joseph's and Associates as an expert, and he's done a lot of schools, hospitals, etc. in terms of alternate fuel sources. He may have done some of the schools locally here as well, I think.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, Joseph and Associates are the lead consultant on this body of work, and they've engaged
yes,
an expert. Okay, cool, thank you. And how much should we get from ECA?
$20,000, I think, 25,000 approximately. I don't have the exact figure in front of me.
Thank you. Number 10, Cas Square and the playground. I'm just trying to get this really, really clear so we're all on the same page here. A lottery community facilities application in July. A funding decision wouldn't be until about the end of November, early December. So there's a 6-month sort of gap, but with the amount that I assume we would be requesting, I'm sure it would cross the threshold for needing and requiring a feasibility study. Is that your understanding of this, just in terms of the dollar amounts? I'm pretty sure anything over 250,000 requires a feasibility study.
We haven't started the application, so we'll follow that through as an action.
Because the risk here for us as council applying for this fund is that the feasibility study would be quite a hard thing to do for a playground, I would assume, and a skate park.
I assume that people have applied for playgrounds and skate parks in the past, So there would be some.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, sorry. Let me quantify that before July.
I will find out.
Yeah, okay. Because the other thing, and I think potentially a more pragmatic way, would be to phase this project and stage it. And I know that was kind of discussed in some of the email correspondence and it wasn't looked at favourably, but the immediate issue really is the safety concerns of the playground with the boards and with the, not having the bark and stuff there that should become health and safety issues. And we're hearing really, really clearly from the community that the playground equipment is actually what they'd like prioritised. And absolutely there's a separate group and a real interest around the skate park as well. But I could actually see this staged. And certainly with the money that's actually in budget that we've told the community we're going to use for the playground, actually get expended on the playground.
Yeah, we will look at that, Councillor Martin.
Because I'm sure we're going to get submissions about it again in the annual plan, right? Cas Square Playground keeps coming up time and again, and it would be great to think that, we went out with an LTP. We heard clearly from the community they wanted work done on Cas Square Playground. We budgeted appropriately, and now we're saying, give us another sort of 12 months, really.
That's obviously leverage funding, and that's
that's
one of our mantras. We have a design ready to go, and we have the budget covered to do the work. So, if we weren't chasing money, we could actually get that executed now.
So the incentive for additional funding is there for enhancement in what I would call stage 2, right? So that the skate park would be stage 2, that the full skate park plan that was sort of proposed was it would cost quite a bit. That's not budgeted for, is that correct?
We have some funding, but I doubt it would go the full way. But
what we do have funding for is to actually complete the playground, right?
Yeah, but we can leverage that funding at 33%.
33%, but which would mean that the playground, the playground would actually become more than what we're proposing.
Correct. If we did it as a joint application.
So I feel that there's possibly a nice middle ground here where we've got money, we've got a community need, we can go for funding for a component of it. And we've got money in budget that we've told the community would use for this purpose. I'm not suggesting we do the Margaret Mayhew playground. I just think that the community have asked and we've agreed to, and now we are chasing money, which is really, really good. And if we can get that external funding, great. But I'm just worried about the timeline between now and June, July to execute on a feasibility study and the body of work that's needed for a quality lottery grant application in the 7 figures.
Okay.
But I'd say carry on.
Paul Madrick.
Thank you. Firstly, the skate park, I still maintain that the skate park ought to be a community fundraising project, not the council. Secondly, we don't really have the money. I mean, we've indicated in the long-term plan, but I mean, that's not cast in concrete. And the amount of money that's talked about for the playground upgrade needs to go to the public to have the public have the say in the annual plan. And if that takes time, it takes time. It's necessary to let the community have that say.
Yes, through the chair, we have put the playground as a topic as the LTP conversation. It was supported.
Yes, with respect, not at that price though.
No one was at that price.
Can I just clarify, the playground, it was supported at that price. It was definitely supported, and the money for the playground hasn't changed from year to year. It's been the same from adoption of LTP through to year 1, and it's now it was in year 1, year 2 of the LTP, and it was very strongly supported by the community. And we haven't proposed in any formal plans or anything to increase that amount as a cost to the ratepayers. They have. Picking up any of our documents, you would see very clearly the LTP figure matches the annual plan figure, matches the scope of the project. What we're proposing for feasibility, what we're proposing for lotteries, as I understand it, is the shortfall that would achieve the skate park component as well. And I'm saying, please don't prioritise that. Please prioritise the work that the community's asked for, particularly around the playground.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you. Just one thing, Simon, you mentioned that the Cass Square playground, the plans have all been drawn up and are ready to go. I thought that last month we discussed that and we're looking at something a bit more unique, or is that what's happened in the last month?
The plans have been firmed up in last weekend. It's to a point where it's got to be cost affordable with the funding we have. Anything unique comes with quite a significant price difference, unless it's been provided by sponsorship or some other mechanism. So it is more of a turnkey type approach, but it's what I believe is the best fit for the budget and for what we can provide.
Sometimes something a bit more unique. It may be on a smaller scale, but at least it's something different to the same old all the time, and it can be built on in the future. Yeah, definitely. Most playgrounds are modular anyway, and in terms of the best bang for the budget, what we've got as an offer is very, very attractive. If we are looking at a bespoke, unique aspect, I think that needs to be as a consideration in a future plan.
Councillor Martin.
Hey, I'm still as clear as mud on this, but I think it's probably not the appropriate time to talk about it any further, because it's dependent on some hard numbers and some facts. And I know if when we go out to consult with the annual plan, we're going to hear loudly and clearly again from the Hokitika community, Cass Square playground. How we deal with that, I think, is up to us as councillors, you know, working with the staff. And for years we've heard it. We said we're going to do it. We've got the plans to do it. I think we need to share those plans. We need to get community support for those plans, and we need to execute and deliver on the plans, particularly for the playground. Skate park is a slightly separate issue, and I think that sits within the future of Cass Square, and that work can be definitely attract lottery funding and community buy-in. But the playground, it would be a shame to think that that work can't start until sort of early mid next year.
Based on the timeline, it's highly likely if we are successful in December, there's been provided a 3-month turnaround in terms of from order to delivery. That includes install. So it's end of summer, early autumn would be the target.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you. Racecourse, that sounds really promising for Monday. That's awesome. Well done on, well, thank you for all the support and lobbying you've done to the government around keeping MTFJ in place. That's a good outcome. I just hope they come to the party with the same number, would be great, because that's achieved so much, that work. So thanks, Bruce, and the staff that have delivered on that. So good going forward. The beach access ramps, that came up in terms of the other night at Creative Communities, in terms of making the Hokitika beach sign a bit more semi-permanent. And I wonder if there's a conversation that could be had there, Simon, in terms of the artists behind the beach sign and some of the funding that they've attracted now through Creative Community to combine this work. There's obviously a planning component that needs to go into how that can work, and it would make sense to me when there's diggers and stuff on site to actually achieve that outcome as well.
Yeah, we've got to be careful we don't, because the funding's set aside for a specific purpose. We also will need to see what the consent timing is for this. Bearing in mind that the beach access itself is really been overseen by Regional Council. We've attracted the funding, and they're allocating the council contribution factor.
Yep.
So I would have to take this up with my team exactly where we're at. I think the beach signage approach, if there's any funding we can allocate towards it, we'll take a look at that.
Oh yeah, I'm not suggesting we necessarily put funding towards it. I'm saying that they have received funding. So the beach sign has got funding from Creative
Oh, I
Communities.
see.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so
and it-
utilising the machinery there
at the same time, yeah,
Okay.
could be a good outcome. And it's got planning considerations, right? So there needs to be a conversation if we can schedule that for the next month or so, someone in staff to talk to the recipient of that funding and the designer of the beach sign, and just to connect in so that's really clear with the, you know, the West Lock work and the seawall work, that the sign doesn't get built and then the seawall gets topped up, for example.
Yeah, the seawall is not, that end is not getting raised at all, from what I understand. But if there's work around the West Lock piece that could impact it, I'll make sure it's taken into consideration. The people that have applied for the, I suppose the Hokitika sign need to take the lead in terms of reaching out to staff.
Yep. And I'm sure they will, but it's kind of connecting the dots there.
Yeah.
The Westlock timeframe, what is that? Is that like within the next sort of 3 months, or?
I'm hopeful because they've been given the purchase order, but I know they'll be working with the regional council, obviously in terms of ensuring that it aligns with their aspirations.
So maybe the next 12 months then.
Can't comment on that.
Carry on, thank you. The CDM, separate conversation, but we've signed the agreement. I'd like us to follow up where we're actually at with the emergency management, you know, the operations centre, the EOC, and get a councillor's update at some stage on that.
Yeah, it's very early stage. So we have appointed a special projects manager and been successful in attracting Joe Patterson to join council team. So he starts 1st of July, and her project is the EOC as a lead for council. So we are at early days. We have reached out to other agencies to see if anyone would like to co-share or cohabitat that area, and have received a couple of positive bites at that. So when Joe starts, he will be taking a lead on pulling all of this together as the lead on the project.
Cool. No, that's really good. Thank you. And carry on scrolling, please. Thanks for operating this screen. It's really helpful. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Are we done there, councillors? I think Councillor Kogan.
Mute, Councillor Kogan.
You're muted.
Sorry, can you just scroll back up to the top again? There was a couple of things that I... Okay, and sorry, scroll down. Okay, so just coming back when I talk about the Chinese gardens, sorry, and I did have a document here just that I'll just quickly brief you all on with that query around the Kamara Ross Gardens, the Kamara Chinese Garden, sorry. So at this point, it was agreed that the presentation that was actually done by Kamara Trust at the meeting be presented and minuted. Moon outlined she would report back to her association and they will provide their feedback on project review and preferred options. Once feedback from the Guangdong Association endorsed of option 2, the working group will recommend to the KRT board and trustee to proceed with option 2. The final decision rests with the KRT board of trustees. It was noted that there is much overlap between the working group and the board. Now, inform wider stakeholders of project review outcome and also commence structural contract, but with the structural contract, part of that being now that the person that's actually going to do it, they're going to come back and ask if the Westland District Council can carry out the contract negotiations, because it's actually the contract negotiations are going to be with Chris Rowe. And so, of course, because Julie Rowe, his wife, is on the Kamara Residents Trust Committee, it was suggested that if we could use the council to actually do the negotiations with him around his contract to complete the work, then that would just keep it away from any conflict of interest with the Kamara Residents Trust group. And I also just wanted to know if you can come further down.
If you want me to comment on that one, Jenny.
Oh, okay, yep.
This is where we get ourselves tied up in terms of local community projects. You know, we don't have enough resources to do our current load of work. I'm not sure how much work's involved in this contract review, but I can't commit to anything unless I see what the scope of that actually looks like.
I can't imagine it, to be honest, being a great deal of work.
So is it more someone just to revisit the pricing that he's proposing?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure we can do that.
Yeah.
Paul Madgewood?
Oh, sorry, Jenny had another question, sorry.
And just the only other question was around, because you've got down here that we won't, because I did ask for an update of all of the staffing changes at council to come out, and I'm not sure why, because I asked that at last meeting and it's saying it won't be able to be provided to us until the May meeting.
I said it's work in progress. It doesn't mean it won't be happening. The critical factor here is that it'll only be senior managers. We're not getting down to every staff member.
Yeah, what's difficult with that though is, for argument's sake, the likes of, I wasn't aware that Vern Morris had actually resigned from council, and the only way I found that out was actually through his wife. Now, when I'm going out to community group meetings, you know, it's useful to know that information before when people at the community groups are saying, oh, who would we be best to contact at council for whatever the matter is.
So everything needs to be channeled through either Sarah Brown for community or myself, not directly to staff. So that's,
well, it's only because Vern was working on them in the past, with them in the past.
If it's a specific project that he's working on, that's fine. But if it's just a general query, we would, rather than channel it through the right mechanisms, conduits. So Sarah Brown's role is community liaison, community support. So channeling everything requests through her, she can do that running around on their behalf.
Okay, we'll have a further discussion on that at some point.
Mm-hmm. You finished, Councillor Kogan? Paul Madgewood?
Thank you. The Kamara Chinese Gardens, I mean, this project has been paved with broken promises for years. So I hope that they do come through this time, because we've heard every excuse under the sun to date. And if the going back to the Ross Gardens example, if the council is going to put some time constraints on that one, then by crikey, the Kamara one needs some time constraints put on it, or else it'll just float on and on and on.
Just through the chair, the Kamara one isn't a council-led project. The resource consent execution is a council-led project.
Sorry, I understand that, but we have they still have accessed council funds, have they not?
No, they haven't applied for funding for Kamara. Additional funding.
Additional funding. The I thought that they got funding from the endowment fund initially for that project.
They have, but they haven't applied for any further funding.
Right. So they still have accountability to the council. The council still has a role, doesn't have a hands-off role. And this is we've allowed this to just drag on for donkey's years. It really needs to be. The council needs to have some oversight of this. It just goes from promise to promise year after year.
Councillors, I see a number of hands up. We've discussed this at inordinate length. I don't want to keep on discussing it this afternoon. Unless someone has got something additional to add to the discussion, we don't want to keep repeating stuff. Councillor Davison, do you have something further to add? Can I suggest when you put your hands up, Councillor, you unmute at the same time? So,
yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to know from Simon if we would be liable if the council took on any contract negotiations for the Kamara Chinese Gardens.
I would have to look at that, Councillor Davison, as part of the scope of work they're requesting.
Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, no, Paul's comments are right, and council created a reserve for this Chinese garden in Kamara to sit on, gifted the land, MDI funding and endowment funding. So I don't think we can sort of just say it's up to the community. I still also think, the flip side of that is community groups do try their best on, voluntary and projects, but we need to have some oversight. And I've been saying for a long time, I think we need timelines around both of these projects to see them through to completion. And I would support and hope that we can get this finished within the next few months.
Councillor Cogan, your hand is up. Do you wish to contribute? Okay, let's move on. Thank you. Would someone move, please, that the action list from the Chief Executive be received? Well, I shall move that the action list from the Chief Executive be received. Would someone second that? Councillor Martin, all those in favour, please wave at me. That's passed, thank you. Simon, you're in the hot seat again. Wow us with 3 waters, please.
Right, I will have to share my screen again, councillors. So, wow us for 3 waters. I will try to do that one.
Big ask, I know.
Can councillors see that?
Yes.
Councillor Cogan, your hand's up. Do you want to say something? No, you don't. Okay, that's fine.
Simon, it's in presenter mode, so we can see the next slide coming. So we can see what you can see. Sorry, just to let you know.
How do I change out of that?
I have to X in the top right. And then just click present down the bottom harder, closest to that one. Yeah, that one, I'm pretty sure. No, that took you in the same one.
There we go. Everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Thank you. So let me start off with what's happened to date, councillors. So as you recall, council partake in a RFI process back in the start of December 2020. At the time, we contracted Tonkin and Taylor to do their work on behalf of all the councils on the coast, and we received funding to enable that. That also came with a $6.9 million worth of support funding, which we have almost spent and due to spend by the end of June. We provided feedback to the Department of Internal Affairs on the proposed 4-entity proposal. That was all provided in an 8-week time frame from October 2020, I think it was. And obviously that was considered by government, sorry, 21. But the minister at the end of that consultation process actually started by saying this is mandated and will happen. And from there, government has formed a national transition unit, which will be in place right through to July 2024. So what is the program that was proposed? First was the establishment of a dedicated water services regulator, Te Mata Arawai. So they are up and established and making headway and making quite a little bit of noise out there in Aotearoa. Regulatory reforms outlined in the Water Services Act. So we have obviously done our gap analysis on that and are starting to, that comes into effect 1st of July 2022. And reforms for the water delivery service, the four water entities, and the economic regulator, which has been driven from MB. So what has happened in terms of Department of Internal Affairs and council engagement? The minister is actually accountable directly for this process and has formed the National Transition Unit, but also looking to establish 4 local establishment entities, which is obviously will morph into the new water services entity over time. The program of work looks something like this. Before the end of June 2022, they're hoping to have the investment decision framework established, a lot of asset information gathered and collated and cleansed, confirmation of the system of record, a lot of staffing and workforce protocols and procedures to be adopted and pushed through. Through the following year, the draft asset management plans, funding and pricing plans will be established, and the design for the new water services entity organisation and roles will be established as well. And we are seeing a lot of roles actually being advertised now for positions within those entities, including CEO roles will be advertised shortly. And obviously there's a lot of work to do before the entities come live in 1st of July 2024, including the staff transfer, recruitment, training and resourcing. I'm not going to go through this in detail because it's a lot in here, but the transition model is quite complex. We have the National Transition Unit. Each local transition team will be established, and below them will be a local working group. Those local working groups haven't been established yet, and obviously there may be one for the West Coast that will need to be established. The work that's in front of us in terms of the transition unit is underway. So we've already started providing information regarding people and workforce. The big piece of work that's been handed to us in the last month is data and digital. So we have already highlighted to DIA, along with our friends in the Communities for Local Democracy, that the timeline way too tight to meet their requirements. So we have to have this completed by the 11th of May, which is very difficult. So
Simon, who pays for providing this information and our staff time and so on? We do.
So how we're treating it, particularly those members of the Communities for Local Democracy, we're actually treating these as legoimas. So, which gives us the opportunity to charge for the work we do. So that's how we're tracking it at the moment. So staff time has been tracked, and then we can then on-go and supply an invoice at a later date for the work.
But will it be paid?
Under a legoima, they are responsible for paying it. We've already highlighted to them that there's some costs coming. There is going to be funding made available, but it's in a couple of slides down, but that is yet to come to us. or to any council that I'm aware of. There's been money put aside in their budget to actually support councils in doing this work. I've asked for an extension to the 26th of May to complete that work at the moment. And we have a representative group working alongside the National Transition Unit to actually look at the feasible work program to make sure it's actually achievable and actually be involved with in terms of putting the time frame together. Already, I think they're struggling with time frame to meet their commitments to government. I'll skip through the slide, and this is what the DIA has provisionally offered. We have established local transition teams to support us. All of this was meant to be in place now, but has yet to come to light. They also talk about providing council with financial support and human resources to support the participation and reduce the burden of councils by removing non-critical activities. I have no idea what that actually term means, because I can't believe that any of the activities we're doing now is not non-critical. It would help if other regulation would be halted just so we can focus on this alone. So all of that is yet to play out. Before I go any further, any questions on the first 6-7 slides?
Simon, just a general one. In the event of a change of government next year, what are the implications of that for this process? I mean, how does it, because they've indicated they're going to unwind it. How are they going to do that?
In terms of the National Transition Unit, I assume that will just be pulling the plug and all that work just goes into a hold status. It really depends on the main challenge that I see would be around if they have employed any staff into those senior roles particularly, and what their contract would actually entail on them in terms of them exiting those roles, if it comes to that. The other aspect, which I talk about later in the presentation, is around the Tranche 1 funding and how that will transition out. It's highly likely that the remaining $1.5 billion that's been put aside for phase 2 or tranche 3, as they call it, will not be made available. But any funding that has been made available will still have to be spent and honoured.
Full measure?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, I think you're right. I think the only thing that's going to stop this steamroller is the ballot box, and that will take courage from any change of government. I mean, they brought in something like 10,000 bureaucrats that are sitting up in Wellington that are crunching this thing through. So no wonder we're getting walked over top of. This is the politics of arrogance. This is what happens when you have an unfettered power in the government, and our local government's paying the price for it in the local community. But anyway, for now, we're going to be dragged along, kicking and screaming by the look of it. But 2023 is where it matters.
Simon, are large sums of money going to be paid out next year prior to the election as part of this process by central government?
I have that further down in the process.
Right.
Chair.
Because that's what I was asking about, the if this has to be unscrambled, what happens to that money that's paid out?
With the first $500 million will be paid out. Our contribution or our allocation of that is 2.8 million. That would still have to be honoured. The remaining 1.5 billion that's been put aside would probably be reneged on, would not be followed through on.
So, being cynical about it, if there's a change of government and we've received a large amount of money and the system is the plug's pulled on it, is that then a windfall for us?
It would be. Shall I carry through?
Yep. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
That subject comes up later in the presentation.
Thank you.
I just want to touch on now the work that the Communities for Local Democracy are working on, and this is obviously we've signed up to this as part of. There's now 32 councillors, correct, Mayor Smith? We have Thames Valley, I believe, has joined us recently the last week, which equates just over 1.4 million people across New Zealand. I just want to touch on the view of the government's proposal in regard to the local Communities for Local Democracy. They do not see that they achieve the goal that's been proposed. And it does state that opposition parties have publicly committed to repeal them if they become public, and to highlight that public polling continues to show widespread dissatisfaction with the proposed set of reforms. We believe that there is room for substantial improvement of performance, and that's been acknowledged across the board. We have supported the formation of Te Mata ROI as a water regulator, but we don't believe forced aggregation is the way to do it. There is opportunity for those councils that have neighbours that can aggregate and come together to offset any financial burdens or efficiency improvements, to do that in their own way, and obviously ensure that that's done effectively as negotiations between local government entities rather than government themselves. Just in terms of the designs that's been proposed by Communities for Local Democracy, what's been proposed is two options, and they could be used concurrently. Once again, a jointly owned council enterprise, similar to a CCO concept, whereby councils join together to actually work together on a water services provider. The fact that if no council holds more than 50%, then that doesn't contravene balance sheet separation. Allows for co-design with mana whenua of the local runangas, and can be potentially subject to ministerial oversight through, very similar to the Energy Companies Act of 1992. Communities for Local Democracy, even though the press has been quite hot on this, is invested with working with mana whenua. Obviously, we have a very strong working relationship with both Makawhio and Ngāti Waewa, and we wish to maintain that. And I suppose a representation of that is how we're doing the wastewater treatment plant for Hokitika, where it's co-governance at a oversight committee level. But we just need to ensure that one size does not fit all. Congregating Westland into any larger entity, there is no perceived value, particularly around operational aspects. There's no way we can merge Hokitika and Ross water treatment plants, for example. Our geographic challenges will never see improvements in efficiencies other than if we receive additional significant funding. We have had previous commissions, productivity commissions support saying that what we are proposing actually would work and make sense. And that has also been critiqued by external consultants as well. What was proposed is very much similar to how roading is managed within New Zealand through a FAR rate. So those smaller entities that are struggling with financial burden can actually apply for financial assistance through a larger entity, through that government entity that actually holds the purse. So, and also a regime will be supported by an overarching efficiency group, which will look at best practice and report back on the status of the individual components of 3 waters within each council. The funding would be made via a connection charge, and go into a centralised pool, the standard rate would be the standard across all of New Zealand, but the FAR rate would dictate how that fund would be allocated through the districts or through New Zealand. Basically, that's a form of cross-subsidisation for those communities that are less affluent than others. Establishment of a water efficiency group. Once again, this ensures compliance and standards are maintained, ensures that the standard of the type of plant that is built is optimised, ensures that any plants that are suffering through increased activity due to tourism, etc., are optimised in terms of support, and also offset the ability to breach debt borrowing limits by ensuring that the funding mechanism supports those smaller councils. I've got some slides here on the assessment of the government proposals, but I'm not going to go through these one by one, as I think we all fully understand in previous conversations with council that the proposal is wrought with issues, particularly around the various components of it. And I'll take those as already been read, unless council would like me to go through them one by one, but happy to take questions on any of them. I just want to finish off on this slide, which is talking about the current opportunity for councils around the Better Off package. So government's made available $2 billion to the Three Waters reform. The first 500 million, of Crown funding is available from 1st of July 2022. Applications are now open to make applications for that funding, and the remaining 1.5 billion are available from 1st of July 2024. So they are seeking proposals for the first 500 million, and the applications close on the 30th of September 2022. Westland District Council's contribution or allocation of that is $2.79 million. It does come with some fishhooks that we have commissioned some legal advice through the Communities for Local Democracy. One fishhook is around not contravening the reputation or being in a conflict of interest to government. So there is work being done now to ensure that those clauses in the agreement don't compromise what the Communities for Local Democracy is actually trying to achieve by challenging government on the reform package. And the second part of the legal aspiration is around the contribution, to make sure that if we take this contribution, it's not a contribution to the sale of our assets. This is set aside for a contribution to supply only the services required for sharing information to the National Transition Unit. The criteria for that funding is set down in the bottom right-hand corner. They have to support communities to transition to a sustainable and low emissions economy by including resilience to climate change and natural hazards, delivery of infrastructure and services to enable housing development and growth, with a focus on brownfield or infill development opportunities where those are available. And thirdly, deliver on infrastructure and services that support local placemaking and improvements in the community well-being. Probably heard enough from me now, so happy to take any questions on any of the slides provided.
Simon, the submissions made by Communities for Local Democracy that you just referred to there were the submissions that were put to the Minister by the delegation that Councillor Martin and I joined a month or so ago in Wellington. My recollection is that the Minister indicated that she would consider those over the next couple of weeks and then respond to C4LD. do you know if there's been any substantive response from the government to those?
No, I don't think C4LD has received any formal response. Mayor Smith, do you have a confirmation on that?
No, there's been no response received at this stage.
Thank you. Paul Madgett.
Thank you. So just to summarise then from that presentation, in other words, they've got us over a barrel. Yeah, and I think probably the worst thing of that is I heard last week this discussed, and they were indignant that to suggest that it was a gagging order. But if it looks like a pig and it oinks, then what do you think it is? It's a gagging order, and it's just abhorrent that this has crept into the government. Yeah, I'm also really ashamed of the role that the complicit media have played in this. I mean, just about every night on telly, or you pick up the paper and there's another story about some travesty with someone's water supply. And it's all building up a picture. I think it's all very carefully construed, but what do you do?
Can I just comment, Chair, in terms of the gagging order? So that has been highlighted to C4LD. Following the legal advice, there has been a request that we propose variations to the proposed agreement to ensure that any work that's been undertaken by C4LD is not considered as contravening the clauses within the agreement, to ensure that the funding, if applied to, doesn't get pulled once if there's any negative publicity because of it.
Mayor Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This first tranche of funding that they're talking about, if we don't accept it, it rolls through into the second stage. It's still available. This is a classic rort by the government to take three water assets from around the country at around about 8 cents in the dollar. And it all comes down to property rights and whether our ratepayers who have paid for all these assets have any entitlements, which we believe they do. And around the country, the opposition to three waters is growing. It's not shrinking, it's actually growing. And so what we have is the Labor cabinet, I don't think they'll stop. I think they'll carry on, and they'll walk the plank next year.
Bruce, how do you account for the fact that there are 67 local authorities, as I understand it, around New Zealand? Less than half are a member of C4LD, which does that say to you that a small majority, in fact, do support these proposals?
Yes, a small majority do, but keep in mind, Phil Goff, Auckland is out. Auckland does not support. Now, I think it's, is it 1.3 million up there?
Yeah.
People, Auckland's out. Of the 67 councils that submitted, 60 opposed 60 opposed. When we went out to the councillors or just the councils and said, look, why don't we get together? 32 have now arrived. We started off with 11, went to 15. We're now at 32. There are others indicating that they may join. And I guess a lot of them, the ones that haven't joined, have got proposals of their own, but they don't support Three Waters. We've met with the two co-leaders or the two leaders of the Maori Party, the Greens, ACT, National, and they're adamant, absolutely adamant that they will turn any legislation around. So this is, to me, this is a cause where, yes, they could go ahead, but ultimately it's going to fall over.
Yep. Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much. I'm just curious because there's been a lot of discussion around mana whenua. be really good to understand what the position of Potini Ngāi Tahu is on this kaupapa, and also Ngāi Tahu, because I keep hearing conflicting views. Paul, would you be able to advise, because reading the national media, it would appear that Ngāi Tahu is in support of the three water reforms. And like you said, you know, media obviously have the ability to spin stories particular ways. So,
yeah, I'm not going to comment on the Ngāi Tahu position at all in this forum. All I'll say is that Ngāi Tahu is a corporate body. We're Potini Ngāi Tahu.
Okay, any further questions of Simon? All right, Simon, look, thank you very much, Simon. That's very comprehensive and informative and helpful, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out in the next little while. Not well, I suspect. Okay, Simon, are you happy if we move on?
Yes, Chair.
Do you require a motion receiving your
Yes, please.
presentation?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Someone move, please, that Chief Executive's presentation or update to Council on the Three Waters reform be received. Someone move that, please. Mayor Smith, a seconder is Councillor Hartshaw, and those in favour, please wave at me. Thank you. Passed. Carried. Thank you. We're now at item 8 on the agenda, which is staff reports. And the first one is of these is the 6 monthly transportation report from Carl Jackson on pages 12 to 15 of the agenda. Thank you. Is Carl? Thank you, Carl.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. Before I'll take the report as read, but before I ask for any questions, I'll just clarify a couple of things that have changed slightly since the report was written. In terms of speed limits, the new land transport rule setting of speed limits 2022 was signed off by the Minister for Transport on the 18th of April, and the changes in that new rule come into effect from the 19th of May this year. One of the early changes that is being looked at, and there'll be, I'm attending a workshop next week on this, is speed limits around schools. They're looking at transitioning to lower speed limits by 2027, with 40% of them done by 2024. So there's some opportunities potentially coming up for additional funding in that area. Additionally, just to carry on from the actions list at the start, the Canary intersection there is set to be sealed next week, which will complete that body of work for that crossing and intersection change. It was scheduled for this week, but due to some COVID absences from the contractors, they've had to reschedule it. I'll open it now to questions.
Thank you, Carl. Any questions from councillors on the contents of Carl's report? Councillor Martin.
I just was waiting, you know, like pregnant pause before I put my hand up. So we might start with Councillor Neal, if that's all right.
Councillor Neal.
Thanks, Lathan. It takes me longer to find the different bits on this. It's not a touch screen, so I'm a bit slow today. Thank you, Carl, for your report. Just one question with the different rules and so on, and you say there's going to be slower speed limits around schools. What about the routes to schools? And I'm particularly thinking of Cogan's Road to town and Howhow Road coming down there from up on the terraces. Are we likely to be able to make that safer for cyclists?
Well, potentially. I mean, the rules themselves won't cover routes to schools. Primarily, it's focused at the streets in and around schools, where there's the higher pedestrian use from the school children. If there's issues with school routes, and we're actually working in with the current bus company at the moment to reposition some of the school route and school children signs around a couple of locations, and that's through feedback from the bus drivers. So we can actively change and make enhancements as we go for minor things such as that.
A wee while ago, we did have some good submissions about some sort of cycleway from Crogans Road getting into town. So I mean, I'd be really keen to see something like that being progressed.
Yeah, I think the challenge with that is the state highway is going to be the problem area for that, and how our friends at Wakakatahi see that prospect.
I totally agree. That is a problem area. It's a huge problem area for the school kids. But yeah, like to see it progressed. Thank you.
Paul Madgwick.
Just a comment regarding the Reseal program, which is a bit of a worry, isn't it? If the inflation and the spiraling cost of oil has meant that we only achieved half of the resealing that we did last year. Is that right, Carl?
Yes, that is correct. It is the reality that we're faced with at the moment. I'm hoping it's potentially a short-term blip, but we won't know really until we get a bit further into it. What it does mean is that we are likely to need to increase that funding requirement to cover those extra costs going forward, just so that we don't end up going backwards. We will need to be keeping a closer eye on some of these assets that we push out a little bit further, though. So there is a bit of risk involved in there that we need to deal with.
Yeah, it's worrying. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Carl, for the report. It's really interesting about the statistics, the percentages of the reseal dropping. Have you done any sort of desktop analysis of what that actually means in terms of material changes going forward? If we can't achieve the reseal, the percentages we're looking at, is there a position where we land where we're actually falling short of doing the required works for these roads, or do you think we can still deliver in line with our sort of asset management plans, even at a reduced percentage?
That's a good question. It is going to be a challenging process going forward. Ideally, we should be sealing 6 to 7% of our network on average. So it does mean that we are going to be falling behind in some areas, and like I said just before to Councillor Madgwick, we will need to keep a closer eye on these assets as we go. I know a couple of years ago, Wakakatahi did reduce sealing rates around the country in terms of lengths. Their idea was to sweat their assets a little bit further. That did backfire on them somewhat, and they had to increase those levels back up to current levels. Now, that's not to say that we won't have to do the same thing, but we will have to look very closely. I haven't done any analysis on that as yet, but we can certainly look to that in the future.
Yeah, because I always sort of thought that Western had that policy of around 6 to 7% reseal, and it would be nice to achieve that. The second question kind of related to that is this a matter of doing less per area of road, or is it a matter of deferring certain roads for reseal. And what I mean by that, if a road was proposed to have a kilometre resealed, would that be reduced to, say, 900 metres? Or would you continue 9 out of 10 projects and then carry forward, you know, the 10th project?
It's actually going to be a mixture of both. What we will be doing going forward with this is looking a lot closer at the large lengths of steel that we've got programmed to be done, and potentially we will be shortening some of those to do only the areas of highest need. And yeah, likewise, some areas it might be a whole section that we look at and say, well, okay, it's actually able to be pushed a little bit further, and we will need to push that and defer it.
I guess it's unfortunate with the cost of everything increasing. It's just, it has a material impact because it's something that does affect everyone's daily life, the quality of the roads in our district. So I think policy to me is we should be still aiming to do that 6 to 7% per annum, and we probably need to just get some sort of report future state on the actual implications of that cost wise, because I mean, the money is going, you know, isn't as going as far as it once was, particularly in relation to these where we've got oil and, you know, driving the cost of this up, and construction, petrol, everything associated with roading is I assume increasing. So it would be a shame, particularly when we know we've got some large capital works that need to be done on our transportation network to also not be keeping up with the reseal program. So basically, I'm saying, you know, I would really like to see if we're considering at any stage reducing the ratio, you know, the seal, that I think we actually need to do that with the knowledge of councillors rather than just let it happen because of the budget constraints. Sorry.
Just through the chair, obviously that budget's set and approved with Whakatahe. So any spend over and above that will be council 100% contribution.
Well, I think I understand, and that's what I mean. We'd have to do it with some knowledge, but I think there's also another avenue here around when those budgets were set by Whakatahe, it was a different world. And the world's moved since then, in those sort of, even in the months since that was approved, in terms of the costs associated with all of this work. So surely there's an avenue to actually be going back as well politically and saying that the budgets aren't fit for purpose, if we've got the evidence to back that up.
Yeah, bearing in mind that their budget will be totally squeezed now as well for National Road.
Well, maybe they could take some of the money they're wasting on Three Waters and apply it to our transportation infrastructure around the country. Might be quite helpful. I've got plenty more on this, but I see some other hands up.
Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whakatahe is struggling because when people paid road user charges up till 3 years ago, the money was spent on the roads. Now it's spent on cycleways, subsidising electric cars, coastal shipping. It's just a slush fund. And what you're seeing here with this budget that's being, this information being presented, is looking in the mirror at what's going to happen with Three Waters. Around this table, the only chance that we've got to increase the budget coming to Westland for roading is political. That's the only chance we have, and that'll be a very, very small chance. And then after that, we go back to our ratepayers and say, look, we're $500,000 or $1 million short on resealing, because all of the professionals say we've got to do between 6 and 7% reseal each year, and we're not doing it. That's the problem that we've got coming forward with this type of ideology. It's quite crazy. Look, politically is the only answer. Rock the boat. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Davidson.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to know what action plan we have to complete that 6 to 7% resealing?
Yeah, currently we don't have an action plan other than works that we didn't do this year. We'll be looking at this coming season. So effectively the program that we've got gets pushed out by another 12 months or more. We are a little bit constrained in that our roading allocations are fixed for a 3-year term. We're only still in the first year of that 3-year term. So we until we get to towards the end of that, we can't actually make too much change in terms of increasing expenditure unless we start tapping on the ratepayers' shoulders. And I'd rather we don't do that at this stage. We need to stretch what we've got as far as we can.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Simon. I'll just so the resealing, it's fairly critical. It's for the council to have those roads sealed, because if we don't seal them in due time, I understand the cost is even going to be greater to reseal the road. Is that correct?
That is correct. If the road deteriorates too quickly, then it is going to increase that cost. That's why we do need to take a very more hands-on, active approach and keep a much closer watch on what's actually going on with these roads, so that we can anticipate when those failures might occur and get in before they happen.
Sure. Okay. Look, I'd like to see this be part to go into the action list, so that we council can have keep updated on this situation. Is that okay, Simon?
I'm not sure there's going to be a requirement to report on it every month. I think we have committed that Carl's come back every 6 months to give a council an update.
I think we could likely pick that up in our 6-monthly update.
But I can also update it in my CE's update as every quarter as well, just in between Carl's update.
Thanks very much, guys.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you. Carl, what percentage of the cost for resealing is fuel and bitumen?
Crikey. I couldn't actually give you that off the top of my head. I'd have to come back to you on that one.
Ballpark figure? 5%, 20%, 80%?
It's probably a higher figure than what we think. The material costs themselves are not particularly high, other than the bitumen, which is the killer. No, look, I wouldn't want to guess on that.
It'd be interesting to know, just so that we can see how much of the issue is the fuel cost increase and how much of it is other things. So that'd be good. Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Martin, are you still going?
Thank you. Yes, I think we need to write to the minister about this. I think we're stuck. Staff are stuck. They're stuck in a position where they can't do much because they're contractually bound. But the reality is, when that contract was signed and Waka Kotahi's funding was confirmed for Westland, it's a completely different world to the world we're in now. Quite frankly, a reduction in the dollar's worth less than it was when it was signed. The costs are increasing exponentially. I think we need to be writing, taking a political stance on this and writing from the mayor, through the mayor, to the Minister of Transport and associated ministers to raise this as an issue, because there'll be other rural councils that are in a very, very similar position nationally, and who will be starting to see this hurt. Won't be sort of now, it'll be in 3 years' time, when it's suddenly, well, the road outside my house is all full of potholes, in back road in middle of Canterbury or South Westland or somewhere, and we have to say, well, sorry, we're restricted by the funding that we've actually got in front of us and available to us. I think a strongly worded factual letter from His Worship would be very helpful as a starting point for this ongoing discussion.
Just through the chair, just to remind of councillors, I do have James Cahill joining us again in May from EGTA. He's the South Island Regional Coordinator. So I've asked him to come present to council again. So I think it's probably a good timely position where we can actually express our concerns directly to him and then follow it up with a letter to the Minister if that's supported.
Solution?
Is this the same person that we talked to about the 50k speed limits on the bridge 12 months ago and we were going to get an answer in a month?
This is the James Cahill who did present to council, yes, and
Yep.
he's also been working with Kiwi Rail on getting the roundabout at Kamara.
Roundabout, yes. There's a bit of a recurring pattern here, and it's often if we don't actually sort of take quite a definitive position, and it's not about being, you know, I don't think about being rude. Forearmed is forewarned, knowing that he actually is going to be coming to this meeting in May. There's going to be quite a few questions in this space. Might mean that he can use the next 4 weeks to actually do some, you know, find some answers.
Yeah, so if I can pre-warn him in terms of the type of questions likely to be coming to him.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Moving on from that, it's actually not in your report, but it was a good outcome to see the roundabout at Kamara see some progress there. So I'm sure the community will be a lot happier. Carl, WHS, does in your report, is that referring to Western High School? Is that the WHS we're talking about?
Yes, that's correct. We have been working with them, as you're aware, on an option for a crossing in Hampden Street. So I have a preliminary design on that, but in terms of the funding, I've been trying to get an answer out of our partners at the Transport Agency on that one, and the latest for that is to wait until we get a little bit more traction in the speed limits around schools, because that will play a big factor in how that gets funded. And there might even be another funding category set up for that activity.
Okay, I raised it in writing last week, but just a status update on the worst street in Hokitika, not the worst street in terms of people, but in terms of condition. Sewell Street, particularly North Sewell Street, full of quite obvious potholes, quite a lot of infrastructure underground, obviously coming to end of life and starting to fail, you know, often having ponds of water and things, geysers appearing. What are we actually proposing to do for that northern end of Sewell Street? Because in the past when we've raised it, it was like, oh, it's going to get a complete, you know, a new crown and camper, and it's going to be, you know, a fabulous street in a few years' time. And then that was reduced to, well, you know, Western Milk's lines going in, they're going to seal that bit. So now you've got people just, you know, driving along where the road was ripped up and the pipe put in, because it's the smoothest part of the street to drive on. I'm not suggesting people cross the centre line and drive the opposite way, but it's in a really, really bad state. And the residents there have been saying for quite some time we need to get onto Sewell Street. So I think we are getting onto it, but I just want to know what we're proposing to do.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So, and that one has caused us a few problems more recently with stormwater issues that we found out about, which has caused us to hold off on the roading works until the stormwater issues are fixed. The plan of attack for that at this stage is to mill and relay the pavement over top of the old water line, which is the worst defective area on the eastern side of the road. There are a number of other depressions which we will be milling and levelling and smoothing. In terms of the overall shape, there's not a huge amount we can do with the western side, because if we lift that through there, it will end up causing problems for the private properties through there, all being most of them being lower than the road. So we're a little bit limited in what we can do there, but the aim is to smooth as much as we can before we go through and resurface it. At this stage, the initial estimates from the contractor on smoothing was sitting at about $80,000 worth of work just to do that before we then go to anything else.
Well, thanks, Carl. And you was what a time frame for that work? I know, I appreciate there was some water issues underground, but have we got, is it this financial year or a next financial year body of work?
I think given that we're getting towards the end of this financial year and there's a stormwater line has to be done now, any work that we do now won't be until next season when it warms up again. There may be a little bit they can do earlier on in the piece if we get some really good weather, but the majority of that will be looking at from approximately September onwards, when we can do that sort of work without causing too much disruption or getting too many weather effects.
Oh, that's actually really good, September. So it would be really helpful, I think, to do a bit of not a flyer drop, but for those residents to just say, the forward works plan for the next 12 months includes, you talked about a water line upgrade or repairs, and also, the smoothing on their road, just so that they've got an indication, because there was quite a lot of negative publicity recently online and stuff around some things, and just it all really comes back down to communication, I think. And if we can say within the next 12 months these two big significant issues will be addressed for them, I think it's really good progress.
Certainly, if we get some opportunities to do more sooner, then we'll certainly explore those as well.
Cool. And the similar thing for Davey Street, the northern end of Davey Street, where there's quite a lot of suppressions in there.
Yeah, yep. Davey Street is going to be another one that we'll have to treat much the same way. In that context, there's been a lot of settlement, but not a lot of surface failure. So there may be some options just to do some lower cost overlays in that area, just to smooth out the depressions.
It's quite bad. It's quite a good four-wheel drive or BMX track, though. At the moment, the Mitre 10 pavement, or that area outside of, I just call it the Mitre 10 footpath, but it's the area down Hamilton Street, that one part of it is in front of Mitre 10. What was the decision around the product that would be used there in the end? Where did we get to with that?
From my knowledge, that was going to be the stamped concrete in the same manner as what was done outside Take Note. And that I believe that's next on the list to be done following Park Street.
Yep. And a good pat on the back is Park Street. I appreciate the contractors have obviously had delays as a result of illness, but what's going to be there as sort of finished product is going to make a significant difference for mobility and walkability around that area. So well done. I know it's difficult for the residents that are living there at the moment, because they have to sort of walk across a bit of Shanty Bridge and stuff to get into their homes. We've got a few issues there we can iron out offline, but in the next month, that's going to be a really, really improved stretch of a footpath. So thank you for your work on that. And I'm sure it would be timely too to through you, Simon and Carl, to get Winnie's presentation and change some of the colours on it, and then represent, because it would be good to know, like there was comment in here, Carl, about like Southwestern having some potholes filled and stuff in the footpaths. It would be really good to see those maps again, see the reds turn to whatever they've been turned to, if they're still red or green or orange, and then the progress we're actually making towards that, because again, footpaths, core business, and a lot of interest from the community to get these sorted. So we're making progress. We should be communicating that progress, I think, really clearly to the community.
Yeah, that's noted. Thank you.
No, thank you for your work on this. I know you get a lot of questions from me in the transportation area. You'd think I have a vested interest or own a trucking company or something, but get a lot of really good community buy-in around transport because it's obviously something people use every day. So appreciate your work on this, Carl, and nothing further from me.
Paul Madgwick.
Oh, jeepers, I just about forgot what I was going to say. It was regarding I understand the sentiment about writing to the minister. However, I wouldn't put a lot of staff effort into it if I were you. I think it's got about as much chance as swaying the government over three waters. The difference here is that NZTA, or Waka Kotahi if you must, is a different dancing to a different tune these days than they were when that contract was signed. And this is they've got a different master, and that master is demanding a whole new direction, which doesn't involve a whole lot of cars on the road and etc. And there are, as His Worship said before, there are new priorities. Anyway, so sealing of roads for local government, I'm sure, is not high on their priority list. The other general comment I'd just like to make on that is don't forget, in talking about the Hokitika ward, that there are a lot of pothole roads outside the Hokitika ward. That they've also deserving of attention, but of course they all have to take their turn. Thank you.
Councillor Davison.
Thank you. Carl, could you just explain what milling means? You mentioned about milling the Saul Street Road.
Yeah, certainly. What we use there is a special attachment on a bobcat, which basically, well, it does what it says. It mills the surface of the road, basically chops it up into smaller components. We can then either remix material in with that or remove that and replace it. In this instance, we'll be remixing some additional material in that and doing some cement stabilisations. So that'll provide a harder, more level, smooth running surface. So once that's blended in, that gets rolled and re-levelled and then sealed up again.
Oh, thanks, Carl. And what, in terms of the subsided and where it's starting to sump there a bit, what happens there?
So it depends on the level of the subsidence. If it's only a small amount, we can often get away with open graded emulsion mix, which is the cold asphalt that you see used around the place for potholes and things like that. So that goes down, and it generally has a life expectancy of up to 2 years. Inside of that time is when we need to look at resealing over top of that to seal it up.
Yeah.
If it's over a certain threshold, then we look towards other methods where we would mill it and add some material to bring the level back up and then reseal it.
Okay. So in other words, you'd even sort of dig it out if it's if the material underneath wasn't up to standard, you'd dig that out and replace it?
Yeah, if we find any substandard material underneath when we do the milling, we do over excavate and replace anything that's particularly bad. It doesn't often happen. Sometimes roads just go out of shape because they're old, and it could be some deeper underlying effects that's caused it that we don't know about. But levelling generally lasts for quite a while.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Carl.
Would someone move the reception of Carl's report, please? If someone who'd move that to Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Hartshorn. All those in favour, please wave at me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Carl. That's informative and helpful, and look forward to hearing from you in 6 months' time.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Fiona Skadden. She there for the endless river.
Councillors.
Hi, Fiona. Welcome.
Hi, Rebel Street one more time.
Yeah, just going to say, this is Fiona's last council meeting, her last day of council with the executive. Tomorrow is tomorrow. And just want to thank Fiona for all the work that she's done in this public forum. So over to you, Fiona.
Thank you very much, Simon. Right, so at the last council meeting, we put on the table the idea of whether to retain Rebel Street in its current one-way format or whether we would look at reversing the matter. The requirement or the suggestion from councillors was to go and have that full engagement with the shop owners, the business owners, before bringing it back to council. So in the time in between, there has been discussions with the different business operators along Rebel Street. Basically what we came back with, there were 89% that considered themselves not opposed to the current format and didn't necessarily want it changed, or sorry, reversed. 73% were absolutely in support of it, very strongly in support of it, and we had 11% opposition. Those 11%, that was the pack up and move it out scenario. That wasn't we want changes, that was just reverse it. What we did find was that the ones that said that they weren't opposed to it, so not necessarily 100% yes in support, were kind of sitting on the fence. The main issues that they had were they were things that could be mitigated. So for example, occasional vehicles still driving the wrong way up the street. So identifying that there's potential for better signage or more signage there. And camper vans apparently still trying to park down the street. And one of the explanations we had is that they assumed that because the camper van pointed to the north of Rebel Street, it was saying that you can't park to the north of Rebel Street. The interpretation of the sign was allowing people to think that they could park down there. So again, something that can be tweaked. I do think that moving forward from the discussions that we've had, it would be really worthwhile for more discussion with the business owners about potential tweaks going forward and potentially workshopping that with council as well. But that would depend obviously on whether it's decided today that one-way system is retained. So in summary, the options are to either retain it in its one-way format or reverse it back to the two-way direction. And the recommended option going from the support response that was received was to retain it in its current format.
Fiona, what's required legally to do that or nothing? Is it just practice?
We looked into that. So I think we've ticked the boxes in terms of engagement with the directly affected parties. And we have gone through the process. Well, this is the process to affect the bylaw around traffic management. So I think, yeah, as long as a resolution is made today, then that's the legal effect given.
Okay, Councillor Paul Madgwick.
Thank you. Fiona, I noticed in your report that you didn't manage to get around all of the business owners.
At the time of writing the report, sorry. I have since, but at the time of writing the report.
Right, okay. So the figures that you quoted before of support, is that since you've since speaking to all of the business owners in that block?
Correct, that's current as of today.
Right, okay. I think it was inevitable, the outcome of this, the moment that a simple trial for a one-way street morphed into this whole full-blown beautification scheme. So I think it was inevitable that we would get to the point where the recommendation is to keep it. I just do note, of course, that and along the way we've raided the Hokitika Revitalisation Fund to pay for this work, which was supposed to have been $50,000, but and now, of course, with the warning that if it was to be pulled out, then that has to come from the revitalisation fund, and will deplete that fund, which and its availability for other parts of the town, which of course is a whole specious argument, because that's exactly what happened to the rest of the town, because we raided it in the first place to pay for Revel Street, for one block of Revel Street. However, it's yeah, I think it's done and dusted now.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Cogan.
Fiona, I congratulate you and the team on what we've now ended up with down on Revel Street. I actually really appreciate, even through this whole process, that you guys took into account, you know, because this has been obviously very ongoing, and so, you know, further works were done to there. I have to say, you know, I've seen nothing but great things evolve from now what sits down there. You know, the last few weekends has been a very good example, driving down there on our long weekends when we've had a lot of visitors from away. And I always make a point of actually driving down there just so I can, you know, see where everyone's sitting and how it's actually going. And I think that we've turned what was quite a dismal street into something that has come alive again. It'll be great. It's a shame we couldn't test it with Wild Foods, but I think with further, you know, borders and stuff opening up, I think we're going to see a lot more activity down there, and I'm really looking forward to eventually when we can see some lighting and stuff going up. Just out of curiosity, so with, you said 73% all are totally in agreement. So with the other 27%, how much of that percentage are ones that just require just a few tweaks to actually be able to, like, what percentage are we looking at that outright say, no, they don't like them?
11%.
And what is that numbers, what shop-wise, what does that equate to?
I don't really want to get into that detail because then people will start casting aspersions about who they are.
Okay. So 11%, so there's only 11% that have said no. And the other, coming back to the 73%, have all agreed with tweak, they are happy with it.
Correct.
Okay, well then I think that that's a pretty good outcome, and proves that the majority of businesses down there are all for it. So,
sorry, correct that. So 89% were in agreement with some tweaks. 73% were a definite yes, don't take it away.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay, cool. No, that's awesome. Thank you very much for that. So, yeah, I obviously at this point with continuing to work with the businesses and the tweaks, would like to see it going ahead. And just on that note, before I tune off to you, I also want to wish you all the very best with your work now, going out on your own, and hopefully look forward to still seeing your face at council sometimes as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. Look, and thank you for engaging with the people down on Revel Street there. Really appreciated that. As you know, look, I'm not having a vote in this because of the conflict, but as I was sort of running late for this meeting, I come through Revel Street there at just before 1 o'clock, and to see people on both sides of the street outside enjoying their lunch and coffees and stuff, great to see. So it looks well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. There are two resolutions. Firstly, that the Revel Street trial report from the planning manager be received, and secondly, that the block of Revel Street between I scribbled on mine. What is it? some Hamilton Street and
Well,
Weld Street remain in its current format. Is someone willing to move that motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Cogan. Someone will someone second that motion?
Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
Bruce.
can you just clarify what the resolution is?
That the road remain in its current format, which is one way.
Thank you.
Do we have a second for the motion? Councillor Neal, all those in favour, please raise your hands. Signify that. Those against? And Councillor Davidson abstained. That right, Councillor? Thank you. The motion is carried. And Fiona, just before you go, on behalf of all councillors, really want to thank you for your many years of contribution to council as a senior executive. We have really appreciated you being part of the team and the manner in which you've carried out your duties. And it's a real sad day for us that you're moving on. So we really do wish you all the best. And hope that you'll remain in contact. I'm sure you will in contact with us. So you go with our blessings and all the best for the future. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay, let's move on to the financial performance for March 22. Is Lindley Truman there, please?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Your Worship and Councillor. Through the Chair, I present the financial report for March. I'll take it as read, and through the Chair, I'll take any questions.
Thanks very much, Lindley. Another clean report. Thank you for that. Anyone have any questions? I think the last few meetings there've been no questions, so you must be doing too good a job in your office there. Any questions of Lindley on the contents of her report? There being no questions, would someone move that the financial performance report for March be received, please? Councillor, put your hands up. Martin?
All right, yes, I just had a question I'm happy with the report. I just want to clarify something, if that's all right. I think it's page 26. There's the other revenue. Actual income is higher than planned, mainly due to unbudgeted gains on swaps, 960k, and income gain from vested assets, 562k. Then it says Lake Matheson Walkway and a construction asset at Heritage Industrial Park and part of Franz Joseph water mains. I wonder if you should just clarify what that.
So that the construction at Heritage Park is a shed that I believe is used for the fire museum.
Yep, that'd be right. What is a Lake Matheson walkway that we've constructed?
No, that came from Doc. Doc constructed it, I believe.
So there, just to clarify through the Chair, we will be bringing a report to Council next month to vest that asset into Council's books. This is the walkway from the township all the way out to Lake Matheson. This is part of the project work that was conducted by Doc 2.5 years ago now, I think. And it's got a 12-month warranty once completed. And the expectation at the time was that this would be vested into Council for its longevity.
Okay, cool. No, it wasn't so much a financial question, Lindley, it was that. I was just trying to understand what I wasn't aware of a walkway at Lake Matheson that we were building. So that's clarified that. Thank you. And that's obviously been reflected in the fact that we've now got that on our asset register as an asset pending a decision from Council. So the valuation isn't, yeah, our assets have increased. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I'll remove that the financial performance report for March be received. Will someone second that, please? Councillor Martin, all those in favour, please wave at me. Motion is carried. Thank you. The last matter in this meeting is the LGNZ membership subscription, pages 34 to 58 of the report. Simon, up to you.
Yes, good afternoon, councillors and worship again. Your worship has asked me to bring this to council's attention. The reason we bring it to council attention is the increased cost of LGNZ membership, which has gone up by 3%. And obviously I'll highlight areas of work that LGNZ is doing and areas of work where we believe we've been let down, which I'll elaborate on shortly. So just want to highlight what the $37,500 actually does for us. So there's a number of mechanisms that actually LGNZ support council on. Obviously, they review any changes that come out of central government in terms of legislation and regulation, and do a submission on behalf of all councils to ensure that government are hearing LGNZ or local governments critique on any policies that's coming from government. There are a number of forums that LGNZ sponsor or support, which goes across all various components of local government. So it's the LGNZ annual conference or AGM. They have a separate session around rural and provincial zones, which obviously Western falls into, and Zone 5 and 6, which is pretty much the South Island forum as well. And obviously they also have a young elected members forum as well. They have assisted us quite strongly over the last few years, particularly when we were being threatened by the Minister for a Crown Observer. So LGNZ supported us both legally and with support advice, and also funded some lawyers' fees to actually offset that Crown Observer position. And obviously they have a role within local government in the form of Dr. Mike Reid, who obviously provides a lot of advice around policy, local governments, elected member protocols, standing orders, etc. Just want to highlight also LGNZ have revisited their strategy, and I've provided a copy of that strategy in Appendix 2. And the only area where obviously there's been quite a lot of dispute is around the advocacy of Three Waters reform, whereby they went ahead and signed an MOU with the government without bringing that back to its members before signing it. I just want to highlight that this fund will also carry through to the next term of local government, so the new councillors will benefit from this membership. And I open it up for any questions.
Paul. Paul Madgwick?
Sorry, just unmuting. Yeah, okay, don't agree, I'm afraid.
Don't agree with what, Paul?
With renewing the membership for local government New Zealand. The risk analysis that's given there, which is what, there are 3 points of risk analysis. Lack of representation or advocacy when council requires support. They weren't there for Three Waters. The diminished ability for the mayor and councillors to network with other mayors, etc. That's with the conference, the annual conference, which is really a talk fest. And on it goes. Look, as for the strategy, it's just all slogans and puffery. When it was the chips were down over that Three Waters thing, they weren't there for us. They were made their bed with that one, and it's $38,000, and that's it's a lot of money that, to my view, doesn't warrant it. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Councillor Kogan. You're on mute, Jenny.
Sorry about that. Yeah, look, I've got a real question mark over this. As far as LGNZ goes, and even the suggestion around, with the elections coming up and the support they offer council as well. if it was anything based on the support they provided and the training they provided when we first all come on, that was appalling. And I really got very little out of that training whatsoever. And I'm also interested when it says, you know, for an opportunity for councillors and mayors to get together, which is that once a year at the AGM. Well, I'm not conscious of anything that's ever come out of us attending or other stuff attending that's been beneficial to us either. So, and advocacy, I mean, here was one of the biggest ones, was around the whole three waters, and they didn't even bother to actually liaise with their members, which I think is quite frankly appalling. So yeah, I would really like to hear other councillors' views around the reasons why they think that and what benefit they got out of it that they think would change my mind from thinking otherwise.
Thanks, Councillor. Mayor Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair. They let us down. Their role is advocacy, and they work for us. They work for every council in the country. I've got emails unanswered. When it came to Three Waters, they went ahead and formed a working group. The people who were opposed were absent. The Three Waters proposal, I believe we need, in the most generous way, a reset. I think they need to come down and convince us that we should be part of it, because at the moment, I can't support it.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Simon, what are the negative implications for us of not being part of this?
So as I highlighted in the report, just the lack of representation around the group. We still are, I remember, we're still a council obviously and have all the legal approaches, but we just don't use any of their support functions they provide.
Simon, can I ask for your advice?
Really comes down to, for me, if I was thinking of sitting for council next year, and you know, we have made a resolution in this section not to support or to withdraw from council. Basically, we set the new council up with a position where they don't have direct support. I think it would be premature at this stage, but at the end of the day, I have used them in the past and they have been supportive whenever I've needed advice, but that's at an operational level. Politically, obviously, there's some hot potatoes that they have difference of opinion on.
What about the fact that next year or next triennium it might see a new mayor with no experience whatsoever? Would LGNZ be a useful resource for them?
Definitely, particularly the likes of Dr. Mike Reid, which I know Mayor Smith has used quite often in terms of bouncing ideas off, getting clarification around, particularly around various components of governance, standing orders, code of conduct, policy, etc., etc. We obviously have our own subject matter experts, and we can always find a subject matter expert to support us, which is not coming out of LGNZ. But, you know, if I was running for mayor, I would like to know that there's a backstop there that I can draw on. It doesn't mean that the mayor at the time can't leverage other mayors or other subject matter experts that can help.
Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chair. I too support what Jenny Cogan said. With the induction program, I got not much out of what LGNZ provided. I actually got more out of the talking to likes of Councillor Martin, who's been on council for a long time, and I think we, if possible, we should hold on this subscription, and it should align with the incoming new council, and for them to make the decision, because the subscription runs over a bit of an odd period. I think that That's just my view on that.
When does our current sub end, Simon? Do you know?
I'll have to look at the invoice, I think.
1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2023. 3 years.
It's actually expired now. We're out of subscription.
I see we've registered for the LGNZ conference and presumably paid fees for that, have we? For the July conference in Palmerston North?
Yes, we would have to withdraw from that.
What are they? Can we get our money back?
I would hope so.
Councillor Hartshorn.
Yes, just through the chair, I'd totally agree with Councillor Hart and Cogan. What I got out of the training at the beginning was about zero. So I would not really want to go forward or put it off like Councillor Hart said.
Thank you, Councillor Cogan.
Yeah, I'm still of the same stance, but I wouldn't want to see it actually put off until the new members come through at election time, because I think we've gained the experience of what we've seen being, for me personally, the lack of benefits over the last 3 years. And, you know, to waste that between now and, like you said, March next year, well, the new members are only going to come on board and probably by the November, December meeting. And then, you know, that's going to be very difficult for them to make that call in such a short period of time as to whether they think it's beneficial or not. I mean, we are sitting in a position where we've had nearly 3 years. So I think we're in the right position at this point to be able to make that call.
Thank you, Jenny. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I think it reflects probably a growing distaste amongst a number of councils, particularly around the fallout from the Three Waters memorandum of understanding or agreement with the government. And I think that obviously has created a clear rift between Local Government New Zealand and a number of parties or members, with some actually withdrawing and other councils considering their future with Local Government New Zealand. I think it's time for a reset. I think we need to get the CE and the President on a Zoom and have a discussion, because in theory, there are a lot of benefits of being a member of Local Government New Zealand. The impacts of the Three Waters reform and our council's position in relation to the Three Waters reform means that the memorandum of understanding, particularly the clause around not actively opposing the reform program, has bound the sector into a position that not all councils agree with. So my position on this is we need to discuss it with the appropriate people and let them convince us that a membership with Local Government New Zealand is something that we should continue with. And that's a two-way street, and that our views, particularly those in relation to advocacy and policy matters, will be considered. By walking away now, we run the risk of actually reducing our ability to have influence by pulling out completely. And we might be taking a history of quite successful engagement with LGNZ on basing that on one matter, which is around Three Waters. But I have a very strong view, and you will know that, in relation to Three Waters, and particularly the MOU that was signed and how that's bound or gagged the sector. And I think we need to be talking with the right people, the Chief Executive and the President, so they can hear this firsthand. So I would be of the position where no decision be made today, pending a discussion with Council, the Executive team and the appropriate people from LGNZ, and then that we can reconsider this matter at a future Council meeting with a strong indication that we may be leaving LGNZ.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, thank you. Latham, I agree. I think it'd be really good to get LGNZ down to sell themselves to us. And I think it's probably an unfortunate time to be leaving them with the elections coming up, new people, local government reform, and the three waters, where they should be able to support us. I think they recognise that there's changes that need to happen within their system. And yeah, I'd like to give them the opportunity to sell it to us.
Okay, well, someone needs to take us forward with a motion.
Just Deputy Mayor Crothers, I suggest that we will put the invoice on hold pending pending a successful discussion with both the CE and the chair of LGNZ. So I'll work with His Worship in terms of penning a letter to them, requesting them present themselves to council.
And indicating to them that the fairly strongly expressed opinion of council is that we should be leaving. Should we be doing that?
We'll just say there's a certain amount of dissatisfaction within members, and would like, you know, that arrested before further discussion.
Mayor Smith?
I'd like to move a resolution that the invoice be placed on hold and that discussions take place with the Chief Executive and the President of Local Government New Zealand to give them the opportunity to convince us that the error in relation to Three Waters is not going to be an ongoing thing.
Can we rephrase that to convince us that we should remain a member rather than focusing on the Three Waters issue, Bruce?
Absolutely.
Do you have that, Di?
Yes, we do, yeah.
Okay, you're clear on that resolution from the Mayor? Someone like to second that, please? Councillor Cogan, all those in favour, please signify in the usual way. Motion is carried. I think that's a sensible position. Councillors, that's good. All right, that's the end of the meeting, and we now need to go into the public excluded section. So I move that the council move to the public excluded section of the meeting. All those in favour, also have a seconder of that. Bruce Smith, second that. All those in favour signify. And Simon, I think in relation to the confidential section, there is actually no business other than confirming the minutes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can we just perhaps just now confirm those meetings without having to disconnect?
You're still on live stream. We'll have to stop live streaming first.
Is there any significance in being on live stream if we just confirming confidential minutes?
We'll need to, through you, Chair, we'll need to stop the widecasting and the.
All right. Okay. Just you've got the invitation for the next meeting, councillors. So please disconnect now and then reconnect. Thank you.
Thank you.